The alarm rang at 7, as always. The metallic, insistent sound seemed to vibrate inside Daniel's chest, dragging him from a confused dream into an even more uncomfortable silence. The light coming through the window was cold and pale, and for a moment he felt that the sun was wrong, as if it had lost part of its warmth on the way there. He got up, crossed the hallway, and noticed his wristwatch lying still on the bedside table, 2:47 a.m. He tried to adjust it, but the hands didn't move. The absence of a ticking sound filled the room with a kind of emptiness he couldn't name. The coffee was lukewarm. The messages on his phone were gone. No emails, no reminders, no sound. A dull unease grew as he went down to the street. The doorman didn't return his greeting. He simply lifted his eyes and looked at Daniel strangely, as if waiting for him to pass quickly. At work, things got worse. No one said hello. His boss walked by and asked what he was doing there. Daniel laughed, confused, thinking it was a joke. No one laughed. That afternoon, with his stomach tight, he went to visit his mother. She sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, her gaze distant. "Mom, it's me, Daniel." She turned her face slowly, examining him with uncertainty. "I'm sorry, so you from the parish?" The world seemed to contract around him. The air grew heavy. For an instant, he felt himself fading, like a shadow dissolving on the ground. On the way back, the city was quieter than ever. Daniel looked up at the grey sky and had the feeling that the entire day was just a pause, a mistake in time that no one noticed but him. Quer que eu continue com o capítulo 2, O Silêncio no Espelho, em português ou já em inglês, mantendo o mesmo estilo narrativo e fluidez entre os capítulos. The next morning, Daniel woke with the feeling that he hadn't slept at all. His body was present, but his mind drifted somewhere between dream and something else, a haze that refused to lift. The watch was still stopped. 2:47 a.m. He walked to the bathroom and stood before the mirror. At first glance, the reflection looked right, but when he raised his hand, he noticed a slight delay, almost imperceptible, just a heartbeat out of sync. He repeated the gesture, trying to laugh at his own paranoia, and the reflection hesitated again. The silence was absolute. No wind, no street noise. The world seemed suspended. He grabbed his phone, turned on the radio, but only heard a muffled hiss, as if voices were trapped on the other side of something invisible. He tried calling Clara. Her name appeared on the screen, but the ringing never ended. The phone went dead on its own. He stepped out onto the balcony. Neighbors hurried past, but none looked his way. The entire street moved on a different frequency, as if he existed somewhere between seconds. When he returned to the bedroom, he stopped before the mirror again. The reflection was staring back at him now, motionless. Daniel took a deep breath, and the glass exhaled, but it wasn't his breath. A chill ran down his spine. For a moment, he had the terrible feeling that the reflection wanted to come out, and without realizing it, he was already beginning to fade. And that night, Daniel left all the lights on. The apartment seemed too large, too hollow, as if it had been built only to echo his own breathing. He sat by the window, watching the street below, empty, motionless, drowned in that same cold glow that never felt like sunlight or moonlight. Sometime after midnight he heard it, a whisper. Soft at first, like fabric brushing against the glass, then clearer, a voice calling his name. He froze. The voice came again, low, urgent. Daniel. He leaned closer to the window, heart pounding. There, beyond the fogged glass, stood figures. 3, maybe 4. They didn't move, they didn't have faces. Only the vague outline of heads turned toward him, their bodies like shadows carved out of the air. Daniel stumbled backward, grabbing his phone. He opened the camera and pointed it at the window. On the screen, nothing. Only his own reflection, trembling in the dark. When he lowered the phone, the figures were gone. But in the morning, faint prints smeared the inside of the glass. Pale, human-shaped marks, as if someone had pressed their hands from within. He tried to convince himself it was condensation, a trick of light, anything ordinary. Yet, all day he couldn't stop hearing it in his mind. That whisper circling endlessly. "We remember you, Daniel." And though the apartment was silent, he could feel the air pulse softly in reply. By the third day, Daniel stopped pretending he understood what was happening. The city felt distant, hollow, like a dream he couldn't wake from. His reflection still lagged behind him, and sometimes, Just sometimes. It smiled when he didn't. He needed someone to see him. Someone who remembered. Clara. He hadn't spoken to her in months. They'd ended badly. Quiet resentment. Unspoken things. But she was the only face that still felt real. He found her apartment after sunset. The hallway lights flickered as he knocked. When the door opened, Clara stood there, barefoot, hair damp from a shower. For a moment, she didn't speak. Her eyes widened, and then she whispered his name like a prayer she wasn't supposed to say. Daniel. He almost laughed with relief. Someone knew him. Someone still saw. But the relief died quickly. She was trembling. You shouldn't be here. He frowned, confused. Clara, what do you mean? Her voice broke. You died, Daniel, 3 months ago. The crash at you... The words hung between them like smoke. He shook his head, stepping back. That's not... But her living room told another story. Candles, photographs, a framed obituary with his name. Outside, thunder rolled through a cloudless sky. And for the first time, Daniel noticed that his reflection in the window behind her wasn't there. Clara sat across from him, her hands shaking around a cup of untouched tea. The apartment smelled faintly of rain and candle wax. Daniel didn't know how to speak, how to argue against something that felt too real to deny. You think I'd forget you? She said softly. I tried. God, I tried. But every time I do, I see them. He frowned. See who? She hesitated, her eyes unfocused, staring past him, or maybe through him. The shadows. They started coming after the funeral. I'd wake up and they'd be standing at the window. I thought it was grief. I thought I was losing my mind. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Clara, they've been at my window too. Her gaze snapped to him, terrified. Then it's true. You're not supposed to be here. You're between. The words sank into him like ice. Between what? She reached out, her hand trembling, stopping just short of his skin. Between being remembered and being gone. The ones who still think of you. We're keeping you here, but the things outside, they come when someone won't let go. Daniel swallowed hard. The whisper from the night before returned, echoing inside his skull. We remember you, Daniel. And for the first time he understood, remembrance could be a form of haunting. The night grew heavy around them. The candles trembled with every breath, their flames bending toward Daniel as if drawn to something unseen. Clara's eyes were red, hollow from sleeplessness, but she couldn't look away from him, not entirely sure if she was seeing the man she loved or the ghost of her memory. If you stay, she whispered, they'll take me too. Daniel shook his head. No, I won't let that happen. You can't stop it. The more I remember you, the stronger they get. They feed on what's left of you, and what's left of me. He wanted to touch her to prove he was still real, but when his hand reached for hers, the air between them rippled, a faint distortion, like heat above asphalt. His fingers passed through light, not flesh. He stared at his own hand, translucent for a moment, then solid again. So what do I do? Clara's answer came like a wound. You make me forget. Outside, the whispering began again, louder this time, dozens of voices overlapping, circling the walls. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. The sound pressed against the glass until it shuddered. The apartment lights flickered, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Daniel stepped back, trembling. If forgetting me saves you, then maybe that's what I deserve. But as he said it, a tear slipped down Clara's face, and somewhere, far away, the voices began to scream. The next night, Daniel returned. The world outside felt unreal, drained of sound and color, as if it had already decided to move on without him. Every light he passed flickered as he walked, and when he reached Clara's building, time itself seemed to hesitate. The clock in the lobby read 2:47 a.m. Her apartment door was unlocked. The candles from the night before had melted into shapeless wax. Clara was asleep on the couch, her breathing shallow, her face peaceful for the first time in days. Daniel knelt beside her. The air around her shimmered faintly, like the space between them couldn't decide whether it was air or memory. He wanted to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Clara, he whispered. Her eyes opened. She didn't scream. She just looked at him, tears forming before words could. You came back. Only once more, he said softly. To say goodbye. She shook her head. Don't. Please don't. You said it yourself. As long as you remember me, they'll come for you. I can't let that happen." Outside, the world groaned, a deep, thunderous sound that wasn't thunder at all. The walls pulsed with faint light, and in the reflection of the window, dark figures were gathering, countless now, their faces melting into shadow. Clara grabbed his hand, and for the first time, he felt warmth, real warmth, flooding through his fading skin. "I'll never forget you," she cried. "Then you'll never be free," he said. He leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers, and whispered, "Forget me." The lights burst, the window cracked, and the world went silent. Morning came quietly, soft and pale. Clara woke on the couch. The candles burned out to nothing but glass and wax. Her hands were cold. The apartment felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she didn't remember carrying had finally lifted. She stood looking around, confused. A faint scent lingered in the air, familiar but unplaceable. On the shelf, a photograph caught her eye. It showed her sitting alone on a park bench, smiling at something that wasn't there. For a long moment, she stared at the empty space beside her, her brow furrowing, the strange ache of something once loved and now lost without name. Later that day, as she crossed a busy street, a man brushed past her. She didn't look back, but her pulse quickened. The clock in the nearby cafe read 2:47 a.m., and somewhere deep inside her, a whisper stirred. "I remember you." Months passed, and the world resumed its ordinary rhythm. Rain on glass, voices in cafes, footsteps blending into the city's heartbeat. Clara learned to live inside that rhythm again. She moved to a smaller apartment, changed her number, started painting. Small, abstract shapes that always began in shades of grey and ended in faint traces of blue. When asked about them, she only said, "I don't know, they just feel familiar." But at night, when the city quieted, she sometimes woke suddenly, certain that someone had whispered her name. She would sit up, heart racing, listening to the stillness until dawn softened the edges of the dark. One evening, while cleaning, she found a box she didn't recognize. Inside was a wristwatch, its glass cracked, the hands frozen at 2:47 a.m. She stared at it for a long time, unable to look away. Something gentle and sorrowful filled her chest, not fear, not memory, just a feeling like the echo of a song she once knew by heart. She placed the watch on the windowsill and turned off the light. In the faint reflection of the glass, two silhouettes lingered for an instant, hers and another's, watching quietly from behind the veil of time. Then the night swallowed them both.